direct selling used to be in person, and it used to be simple. Could we have our panel slide, please, on the screen? It's now much more diverse. It's virtual parties. It's product demos on social media. It's sometimes compared to influencer marketing, which has its own pitfalls. Direct sellers can now reach much wider audiences in many more places. And when it comes to direct selling and social media, looking like influencer marketing, it's a problem because, well, the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive, the UCPD, is a good basis to address those practices, but the Commission is considering more rules, a familiar theme this afternoon already. The French Competition and Anti-Fraud Department is now researching influencer marketing. Their report will come out later this year. And the Commission also is studying how to better regulate what they call dark patterns. Dark patterns are tricking users into doing something through deceptive design. And more, and more, and more. We're not going towards less regulation. We are going towards more regulation and therefore probably more complexity. So from social media to the metaverse, that famous metaverse, what's the regulation if you want to ride someone else's unicorn? What's the rule? I don't know. So what's next for compliance and how can direct selling companies get it right? To explore this, joining us here on stage are Adriana Lao, Senior Compliance Manager at PM International. Johnathan Gilliam, Chief Executive Officer at the Momentum Factor. And joining us remotely from the UK, Adam Davidson, Head of Data Science at the UK Advertising Standards Authority. Welcome, Adam. So with that esteemed panel, I'm actually going to start with our friend who is virtually with us here today. Adam, I'm turning to you to quite simply ask you, from the regulator's perspective in the UK and in Europe, as you will show us, what is the picture today?
Sure. Thanks, Bruno, and thanks for the introduction. And also apologies that I couldn't be there in person today, but still very very excited to talk to you all. So I'm going to attempt to share something, hopefully no technical issues.
It works.
Okay, as soon as I make it into a presentation, there we go. Relatively smooth. So yeah, so thanks again. And yeah, as Bruno suggested, I'm just going to give a quick introduction for anyone who's not familiar with the ASA and ad regulation in Europe, just what we do, how we're using tech, and specifically to talk a little bit about influencers, because although I think, at least in the UK, we haven't interacted with the direct selling community so much, we have done work on influencers that might shape some of the conversation here today. So, you know, as a quick introduction to who we are, I'm here from the UK representing the Advertising Standards Authority, which is the UK's independent regulator of advertising across all media, which obviously traditionally meant broadcast, print, but in the modern era is really more about online digital media than anything else. And our mission is that we think every ad that the UK consumer sees should be responsible, whether that means, you know, not misleading, not harmful, not targeting vulnerable groups in ways that shouldn't be done. We offer a range of services. The ASA is very collaborative with industry. We offer advice and guidance to advertisers, copy advice, for example, on pre-press ads. But we also act independently on behalf of the public. We offer a complaint service that members of the public use to raise issues. And we also provide training for industry professionals on, you know, how the system works, how they can best comply.
Great.
And
Adam, before you keep going, your mic is hitting something. I think it's a shirt button. Can you keep your mic line taut so that it doesn't hit anything?
Very careful. Is
Thank
that better?
Thank you so
Is
much.
that okay?
It's the, you know, the charm of online.
Okay, let me know if there's any more problems with sound. I'll try and be careful.
Sure, thanks.
And as well as the ASA, I'm here sort of in part to represent EASA, the European Advertising Standards Alliance, which is the umbrella body for European representatives. So obviously I understand with us today, we have people from organizations all over Europe. And in addition to my perspective here talking about the ASA, wherever you are in Europe, there is almost certainly an equivalent body with a similar sort of process in mind for dealing with these issues. Influencer marketing specifically is a fairly new topic for advertising regulators, but is something that's becoming just increasingly important. It's increasingly important for consumers, so regulators are having to catch up with that. And in the UK, as in many other countries, as I understand, promotion by influencers is no different to promotion by any other brand and through any other channel, and should conform to the same rules, basically, as any other advertising. And especially in the UK, one thing that we focus on is that all promotional content must be clearly labeled as ads. So whereas normally in a lot of media, traditionally ads have been very clearly delineated. In influencer marketing, often influencers might show a product and it's not always clear that there's a paid promotional relationship. So we've been doing a lot of work at the ASA with brands, social media platforms, and the influencers themselves. First of all, education. We've produced guides, simple flowchart type diagrams to help you understand how your posts should be labeled. We also work on monitoring compliance, and we do also work on enforcement activities as needed to make sure that influencers that don't follow the rules don't continue to mislead UK consumers. And to touch briefly on the tech side of things, European regulators, including the ASA, are turning to automated and AI-based solutions simply because the scale of digital advertising makes any other approach really, really difficult from a monitoring perspective. Especially in the case of influencers, the number of influencers out there, the amount of content they produce, manually reviewing that's extremely challenging. And before we were using tech-based solutions, we were doing manual monitoring. People were on their phones at the weekend trying to keep track of what influencers were posting. It really wasn't scalable, and so we've had to make this move to sort of tech-driven solutions. And the sort of approach that we take is very common. I'll show some other examples across Europe in a second, but the general approach is to monitor the accounts of influencers, capture their content, score it for the risk of some particular issue, in our case an unlabeled ad, and then use that to filter down the content to highlight the most problematic influencers. And that's what we're doing now at the ASA. So whereas before we were focusing on less than maybe 5-10 accounts in any given week, we're now focusing on 40 or 50 accounts in any given week, and the compliance team are spending less time doing that, and we're working to scale that up over time. So this is a process. We're on a journey here to develop the tools and work out how to solve these problems as a regulator, but this is the kind of approach that we're taking now. And across Europe, other EASA members are taking very similar approaches in whatever particular social issues and channels are most important, or they feel are most important in their own nations. So, in France, the ARPP are monitoring websites, they're monitoring influencer posts on YouTube for misleading content, as well as non-disclosure, similar to us. In the Netherlands, the SRC have developed some tools in-house to monitor influencer marketing on YouTube. They're specifically interested in things like promotion of alcohol brands and HFSS products. And in Germany, there's been some recent projects to monitor the behavior of food brands to ensure they're complying with advertising codes. And these are some examples, but lots of other nations are either working on similar projects at the moment or have stuff planned in the near future. So really the idea of sort of tech AI for monitoring, especially in this influencer space, is something that's developing really rapidly across Europe. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Adam. I'd like to follow up. As the UK Advertising Standards Authority or any of your European colleagues, have you got in mind any specific events or breaches or cases involving direct selling?
Not particularly. It was interesting. I asked around internally whether we'd had complaints or previously investigated cases in the UK relating to direct selling, and the answer was no. Although we've done some work on direct selling and the claims, we've not done a lot of work on influencers specifically as a channel, which makes me think this is probably an emerging issue that that we also have more work to do on at the ASA as well to understand how we should be acting.
Okay. Or direct selling companies are absolutely perfect. I mean, that's another theory.
That's
right?
entirely that's entirely possible.
Thanks, Adriana. I'm turning to you. You're a senior compliance manager at PM International. So obviously you deal with these issues as a direct selling company day in, day out. What does doing compliance look like for you today?
Okay. Well, hello everyone. And I'm gonna try to paraphrase a lot of our previous panelists because there's some interesting things that said. And for example, Laurent just said that direct selling is complex, and my work is very complex because we have many, many regulations. We have many, many team partners or distributors, independent distributors. And we have different languages that I speak few languages, but I don't speak all the languages, so that is also something that is very complex. And then we don't have correct tools. So my day is never the same. Every case is very different, every country is very different, it's just a complex panorama, let's say, of a job, of a day.
How many markets do you operate in?
We're in 45 countries.
Okay.
Don't ask me how many languages, because
okay, I won't.
For example, we're in Luxembourg, and Luxembourg already has 3 official languages. So start counting every other.
Yeah,
Belgium,
Belgium
2,
yeah.
Switzerland 4 or 3. So yeah, it's a big. It's a complex situation when you have health claims in languages that you don't understand.
Okay.
You don't have the tools that tell you there is a health claim in that language. So, for example, we rely a lot, of course, in my team, which they do amazing work, but also in the subsidiaries, because they're there, because they know the language, and also because we have a problem that is sometimes our searches are geolocated. So, for example, from Luxembourg, we can't access, or we don't have the complete access to, searches in other countries. So we rely a lot on what they can research as well.
So do you approach compliance? As 45 different approaches and rules, or is it a global exercise for you?
So we have, and again, I will paraphrase what Laurent said, that we try to get this. We have guidelines, and we took the stricter framework, and from there we modify according to specific regulations in the country. But normally we have corporate guidelines, and that's what we try to follow.
All right, very good. Yes. Thanks. Johnathan, you work you're from the perspective of a company that helps direct selling companies do compliance, basically. Your product is called FieldWatch. Can you tell us in a sentence what FieldWatch does?
Sure. So I'm remiss, and I need to speak with my marketing team, that it took me being on a panel with Adriana to say we do exactly what she's saying the issues are. So we automate a lot of what Adriana's talking about. So the front end of the compliant search process, it's a very large project, right? It's a very large problem, because the internet is a very big place, and it's very hard to monitor and police the entire internet. So you want to automate as much of that searching as you can, pull it down with AI and other tools into a simple queue, from which maybe your staff or ours can go through and pick the violations, pick those illegal claims, health claims, income claims, and then adjudicate them. So that's what our software is as an enterprise level search and mitigate type of solution.
Great, thanks. And so what are you seeing, or what are you learning from implementing FieldWatch? I'm presuming globally, or in a great number of markets. Are you learning something from the disparity of those markets? Are you working to the most stringent and then down, or?
It really depends on the market. We try and do it market by market and policy by policy even. So most of our clients say, we have our own policies, and they're not as stringent as some others. And I like to say every direct seller is a snowflake. They're all different. They all have different needs, but they're generally the same. But they consider themselves different, and they have a different approach. Some of them are very velvet gloves. Some of them are very accommodating. Some are very strict. So we have to go company by company on that. And so each of our clients has a different approach.
Okay, all right, thanks. So if we look at compliance, there's what we want to avoid, right, or address are breaches. So is it better for a direct selling company to focus more on pre-breach measures, like training, like internal compliance policies, awareness raising, and so on? Or is it better to focus, or more efficient, to focus on post-breach measures, like scanning and then adjudicating and then going after those breaches?
I would say all the above.
All of the above,
So
yeah.
training in advance. We're just launching a new technology that will actually sit on your mobile phone before you send a post out. And if you say something, it's like a spell check, you say coronavirus, it says ding, 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 you shouldn't say coronavirus. So we're trying to get ahead of the post.
Will it prevent? Will it prevent
Prevent,
people?
yeah, prevention.
Okay. So it's not just advice. It's
Right. It's prevention, monitoring.
Okay.
It's remediating as well, and disciplining as well.
All right.
I mean, I was just gonna say that would make my life easier.
Again, let's meet after.
Because now that he said corona, so just as a little fact, our cases multiplied by 4 during the pandemic, and that was, and it's
How come, do you think?
well, different factors. Like a lot of people were at home and went to online to do. I mean, our industry moved to the digital world. Let's say even more. So more people that before wouldn't be on or have an online presence was now there, and so yeah. So our cases got very tricky.
A lot of education
very
involved in
tricky.
that.
Okay.
Yes, well, of course we do trainings, and of course our leaders also help a lot in training their structures. But yeah, there's still too many cases that we find, and I mean sometimes people don't even do it willingly. It's just that they're so the enthusiasm of the product, and they love our products, and they want to pass that energy, which is what we do, right? We love our products and we believe in our products. So, but sometimes the wordings are not very compliant. So I always tell my team that unfortunately we're the bad guys because we're always telling them that they shouldn't do that. But it's not that we don't want them to transmit the energy or, or to stop loving our products. It's just to try to protect us as well.
Right. So that
Right,
the cases
as a
don't land
company.
on Adam's desk.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So Adam, I'm completely foreign to the direct selling industry myself, but sitting from the outside, I'm hearing an industry that seems very careful about its compliance. There's a lot of people employed in compliance. There's a lot of efforts that go into that. From your perspective as a regulator, doesn't it sound like an ideal industry?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I think, echoing what these guys have said so far, at the ASA, we also would have, our first resort would always be to try to educate businesses on what they need to do in order to comply. And in a lot of cases, the issues that we find with influencers are they're often individuals who are relatively new to the business. In some cases, they don't even consider what they do to be advertising. So they don't even understand that they should comply with the rules. Whereas, yeah, in comparison, it seems like direct selling has a very good attitude. The fact that you're all talking about the need to educate up front and so on, I think is very much in line with our ethos as a regulator as well.
Okay, great. And Adam, just to continue with you, yesterday we heard a really interesting keynote from a digital anthropologist who was showing us examples of, for example, an Ariana Grande concert happening in the metaverse. As a regulator, have you started thinking about that potential alternate reality if it takes off? Because there have been attempts in the past to create parallel worlds. I don't know if anyone remembers Second Life. It used to be a big thing, and it's nowhere to be seen today. So the metaverse may follow the same fate. We don't know. But if the metaverse takes off, how is the national and how are European regulators going to handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. We have talked about it, but like everyone else, I think we're slightly, we can't predict exactly where things are going to go, of the potential directions that metaverse-like technologies could go in, which ones will be the ones that will take off and make a real impact on consumers. I think our main takeaway is that we need to understand the space and engage with the platforms involved in delivering these virtual worlds early, because I think in some ways, regulators caught up slightly late to social media. Social media was around for a long time before regulators realized some of the power. And now the conversations that are happening about what needs to be done from a regulation perspective in social media to make it safe for consumers is happening after those systems have been really entrenched in place for many years. And I think with metaverse, regulators have an opportunity to be a bit smarter and start those conversations earlier to make sure that some of that compliance and regulation and safety for consumers is maybe built in by design a little more.
I mean, to build on what you're saying, and here I'm talking to all three of you, in a way, social media platforms have amassed a lot of success, a lot of resources as a result. And so would it be an argument to say that social media platforms should also play a role in compliance?
Oh, I'll take that one. So, yes, of course. It's very complicated. For example, I will say some cases that we have is when we have trademark cases, the social platforms are very easy. There is even a report that you can say, and they act swiftly, and it's amazing. But when
Is it a different procedure as a company than as an individual?
no, it's for.
It's the same.
It's I mean, if an individual has a trademark and they find a case, they can just report it.
All
so
right.
it's for everyone.
It's very structured and straightforward.
Yeah.
So they know it's a trademark violation, it's easy to prove, and you can get rid of it. It's the gray area.
Yeah, so that is easy. But then, for example, when we have a health claim, they don't. I mean, I cannot go and say to Facebook, please delete this post, because for them, it's not infringing. I mean, it's just freedom of speech or whatever. And so, to say, well, yeah, but they're talking about my product. Yeah, but they're just saying in a post, it's not, so it's very tricky. And also, for example, we have cases of impersonations of our leaders or our corporate people. And when you say, even they go and report them, like, this person is impersonating me. Oh, no, we didn't find anything that goes against our policies. So, and the person is like, but it's me. They're acting as me. So you see, we have different cases.
Right.
And there's nothing that we can do as a person or as a company in those cases, because once Facebook says no, then it's still going to be there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to build on that?
No.
Okay. No, that's fine.
No, she covered it. Yeah.
Okay, because then what that makes me think of is if this is already failing today, then what will it be like when we are in 12 months' time in a world where the Putin impersonation that we saw on screen yesterday becomes accessible to anyone online?
Well, talking about yesterday, keynote speaker, I mean, she was amazing, and I told her that I was going to say this. Every time she said something, I was like, this is going to be a nightmare for me. Because I can just imagine, I mean, knowing how our business works and knowing what my job entails, I just saw, many, many cases in my mind of what it could be in the future. And just, for example, not even like riding unicorns or anything, but we have our guidelines, and then we updated our guidelines, and by the time they got updated and approved, there was TikTok coming out. I do not know how to use TikTok. I mean, and yesterday the keynote speaker showed us about how useful it can be as well. But I was thinking, oh my God, like, I need to have a crash course on TikTok so that I can then understand what's happening in that social media. But by the time I'm sure by the time I get fluent in the TikTok language, another thing is going to come up, and so it's just crazy. And then we're talking about influencers. It's just, I mean, I'm really afraid. And even our chief legal officer, also known as Seldia's president, said in her panel, we're not ready for, influencers right now.
It's going to continue to grow. Like, this platform's, TikTok's massive, overnight massive. And influencers is a whole nother category because, in essence, our entire fields are influencers. And now and a lot of them consider themselves to be influencers before direct selling reps. And that's, as our friend on the phone says, this is a problem that the UK government and others are already on beyond direct selling. Like, I'm always surprised because I think direct selling is the richest fertile ground for violations, right? Because you have advertising, you have claims, you have health claims, you have income claims. There's all sorts of issues within the direct selling space. And influencers is just, is it an ad or not? And it's very simple, but it's the whole world. Like, and if you're taking money to promote a product, it is therefore an ad. You must disclose it, and that's kind of where the regulation's going. It's almost leapfrogged us in some ways. I wish it would leapfrog us altogether, right? It'd be great, but it's just those platforms are so big. The platforms themselves cannot really manage it. I mean, Facebook can't manage what's on its own platform. They've got violence and all sorts of things happening, and they can't even. They're not worried about us. They've got much bigger fish to fry.
Although arguably you could also say that Facebook can't even control what's happening on their platform because they haven't put in the resources for that.
True. That's changing, but that's true. It's just, but 3 billion users later, it's just stuff's coming all the time, and they've got humans reviewing that, masses of humans reviewing that. So you've got 12, I think. So, so it's a little smaller, but
right. So Adam, we're hearing an industry that's, from what I'm hearing, is doing its best, or at least putting a lot of effort into all of this. And then we live in a world where we don't know what the next technological innovation will bring, nor how fast it will grow, nor how many billion people it will reach, within X years. So in this context, I want to say, is there some sort of slack to be cut, or are we to expect that compliance shall be respected 100% through all metaverses at all times?
I mean, I think, to aim for absolute 100% compliance everywhere is always going to be a challenge. I think at the ASA, our focus would be, first of all, to focus on where we think there's the most harm to consumers. Yes. So, at the ASA, we prioritize things like where customers are at risk of losing very large amounts of money or negative health effects, for example, over maybe, I don't know, a product that just doesn't quite function in the way that it's advertised. Obviously, we care about everything, but we do assign more weight to things that have more serious detriment to consumers. I think on top of that, as well, as I mentioned before, the way we view regulation is that it's very much a collaborative process. We would always prefer to start with educating a brand on what the right way is to advertise to be compliant with the rules. So I think with these new worlds, metaverse, in the same way as with social media, they will throw up new issues. And those will be issues that, apart from regulators figuring out, they will take society time to understand how those play out and where the harms really are. So I think we have to have a degree of agility and flexibility in working with platforms and companies to define those rules, working first of all on the most blatantly obvious stuff that everyone can agree on, and working our way down from there to get to a position where we're happy with how things are. Will we ever get to 100%? Probably not, but maybe we can get to 90% of the stuff that's most harmful for consumers.
Okay, thanks.
Well, sorry, Adam is very positive thinking, 90%. Wow, that's
okay.
That would be an ideal world for me, but
what would be your percentage?
Well, no, I wouldn't. I don't know about percentages.
I mean, you went there.
I don't know about percentages, but just because I'm thinking about the daily work, and the reality, because sometimes regulations the theory is good, but the practice is not at all the same. And we have many regulations, many countries, many. I mean, as I said, we're in 45 countries. What a regulation in one country is maybe stricter than the other, so that our distributor from a company of a country where we can practically say whatever you want says something on Facebook, and then the problem is that someone from a country where it's stricter sees that, and then the blame goes to me, to PM. We had that case, for example, with the U.S. DSA, who I got a nice email saying we were in breach of a health claim, and I'm like, okay. So they gave me the link, and I go to the link, and it's someone in Papua New Guinea. And I was gonna get fined with I mean, in the U.S. for something that someone said in Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
So, I responded, yeah, but it's not someone in the US. I mean, of course, I know that that is not a valid, but you always try, you know, to win some time. And until we could fix the problem. So then, of course, we contacted this person in Papua New Guinea. We explained and totally understood. Perfect. But again, we were going to have economical liabilities, let's say, for something that someone said in another country, but someone in the US saw it. So, or, I mean, it could happen
Internet has
anywhere.
no borders.
Exactly.
I mean, it's everywhere.
So, I mean, to work on a regulation, perfect, but if the other country on the side is not doing that the same, then we're in big trouble.
Of course.
So.
Yeah, and it sounds very labor intensive to go after one claim.
Yeah, well, yes, but I mean, it was during Corona, it was, so, but anyway, it's just an example of how metaverse can be complicated to regulate, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
as I said, we have to do it, and we have to work, and I mean, what Adam does is great, and hopefully what Johnathan can help us with also will help us, but we do need to find synergies between our industry, between our sales force and regulators to find a solution worldwide. I mean, we can do it here in Brussels, but if somewhere else they don't do it, then that's where it gets complicated. And metaverse is something that if it goes to the levels that we think it's going to go, it's going to be a tricky ride.
Okay. I'm curious, anyone wants to chime in on regulation, tech, the future of either or both, before taking the executive director? Yes, Mrs. Director. Siobhan, over here, please. Thank you. I agree with Rahaf, you're a very shy audience. I'm very surprised.
No, thank you. I think I just wanted to rebound on two things that have been said. One, on the regulation of platforms themselves. I think the winds are changing. With the adoption of the DSA and DMA, the Commission is responsibilizing platforms as to the content that is on it. So I would see it as a help for us also to be able to engage with them and have a better delivery regarding compliance, because for the moment, they have sometimes been collaborative with business stakeholders and sometimes less so. Even just last week, Commissioner Breton met with Elon Musk to explain to him, great, you're buying Twitter, but by the way, we just adopted DSA and DMA, and when you operate in Europe, this is a rule book you will have to follow. So again, things are changing, and I hope for the best. I would like to go back for us as a European association and counterparts at EASA and other European associations. The question of cross-border cases and the way cases have been looked at or adjudicated so far, and what we see is the reality now, I think is something that I would like to hear maybe, Adam's views, collaborations with other SROs around Europe. But also I would like to come back to the question of languages, because when I talk with my members, they're like, oh, so many languages, it's complicated. And if, maybe Johnathan, you can give us an idea of how you deal with the language issue. You're coming from an English-speaking market in the US, but I would like to understand how you have approached solutions to erase, if possible, the language divide, as Adriana was saying.
Yeah, so we're global. Our clients are global. They're in 45, 50 countries, and automation, is the answer to a lot of these questions. As much as you can automate, the tools are there. There's AI, there's keywords, there's all sorts of ways to collect. Surprisingly, the platforms are not that helpful. We could help Facebook a lot if they gave us the access to their API. We don't do sales and marketing, we only do compliance, and we've had those conversations with them, but after Cambridge Analytica, they're not doing much in that space.
Can I just clarify that API is basically Facebook giving you the keys to
give us
part
the
of its
keys
system
to be able
so
to
that you
review
can
their
integrate.
data for compliance violations, and so we would be, and so they're in favor of us in what we do, but they're not actually letting us to really get access. So we have to use lots of other ways to do that. But the automation technology is there, and this is such a big problem. Just the one that Adriana's described is just for her company alone. That it just requires automation. You can't do this by hand. With the languages, we have 30 people around the world that are in language, but they're on that back end of the processing. Once the violation is found by the machines, we have people that put eyes on it and ensure that check this out is not the same as look at my check, right? Just the word check is a keyword, but what is it? So you have to have human eyes on it ultimately, and that takes people in language because there are colloquialisms locally and things like that that really make a difference.
Right, and also yesterday, I think it was Melody who was telling us that at Amway they were choosing to scale down from around 30 languages down to 11, something like that, in order to speed up internal processing, but also probably to reduce their weight on compliance. Yeah, absolutely. Adam, did you want to react to what Laura just mentioned?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. It's something that I guess, again, it's an evolving area that we're grappling with at the ASA, the idea that, that global companies make claims to global platforms, and to what extent is our role regulating those as the UK regulator. I think it's always going to be difficult to ask that regulations are unified in a sense, because different nations will always have different priorities in terms of what they believe the social issues are that are most important to them. But I think, in general, the test that we would apply at the ASA is, does this communication substantially target a UK consumer? So, if it's talking about prices in pounds, if it's a UK specific account, if it's a company based in the UK or an influencer based in the UK, these are the sort of factors that we would take into account. And so there's some things that we would consider out of our remit. For example, if you're a global company and your global Twitter account makes a claim that doesn't comply with UK regulation, we would probably say, well, unless there's a reason to think that 80% of your followers are in the UK, that's probably not reasonable for us to expect you to comply with, every global code, as long as you're not doing something really, really, that we would consider really harmful to UK consumers. So, there has to be a degree of reasonableness about this, a pragmatic approach, I think, by regulators. Within EASA, there is also a referrals process. So, for example, we will on occasion refer complaints to an EASA partner if we feel that they're better placed to deal with it than us. For whatever reason, it's come to us as a complaint, but actually it falls more within their remit.
Thanks, very interesting.
Can I add to that? Even with the many rules that are coming from the EU and the very active Commission, the regulatory regime is here as a dream compared to what we see in the States. The FTC,
really? How so?
Well, the FTC has taken a very strong stance against the industry, in particular, not even just influencers, the direct selling industry. And those of you who are keeping up, it's a really rough environment there. And I'm curious as to how much Europe may follow, because traditionally over the years it has followed that sort of the lead there. But the commissioner, the chairwoman is 32 years old. She's from a sort of an advocacy background, and the majority of the commission is sort of anti-industry on our side. So our clients and U.S.-based companies and a lot of the companies in this room represented are very worried about the FTC and other regulatory agencies in the States. So I'm just saying, when I'm here and I see collaborative work and the GDPR is having sessions with the industry, that's very favorable. We would like to see that more in the States these days. But it's just a different world there, really.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Any other contributions on compliance and tech? Yes, please, lady here. Thanks very much, Siobhan. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Crystal Holzendorf, VP of Global Sales with PayQuicker. I was writing down as we were, talking about all of these, just to piggyback on what Johnathan was saying. We had 4 employees. Now we're from the supplier side, but we had 4 of our employees participate in the direct selling compliance certification program. So the DSA has been very active in trying to advocate for companies and suppliers that are maybe being affected by our government in the U.S. So there are a lot of other tools that can also be helpful, and hopefully those will also be mimicked.
We have the DSSRC, which is a self-regulating body. It's sponsored by the DSA, and it's a fantastic resource for American companies to stay on top of it. But the regime has gotten so tight that everyone's doing the best they can on the education front, on the staying up to date on the latest keywords, like the word financial freedom. You would think that would be an okay thing to say, but as verboten in the U.S.
sorry, can you repeat it? What is
Financial freedom is a keyword.
Financial freedom.
Yep, and we've
Financial
implemented it
freedom.
across all of our clients because
Okay.
certain representatives in our regulatory regime do not like that word. They think, oh, you're selling the freedom, and they can quit their job, and so there's a lot of that kind of nuance that is not really black and white, but we still have to govern it. No one's telling us you can't say that. They're just saying, oh, we don't like it, you know. So we have to. Okay, you don't like that. Okay.
Noted.
Right.
Okay.
But I'd love to see some more collaborative interaction with the regulators. We really can't, and the DSA works very hard to make that happen. But you have some people who just aren't listening these days. That's
And you know,
worrisome.
when we hear Adam speak from the UK ASA, I hear very collaborative regulators wanting to enter a dialogue with the industry, with civil society, and with other regulators in Europe. So yeah, as you say, it's probably a different landscape. Perhaps I'd like to draw our conversation to a close by asking you all, what's one thing you've learned as a compliance enabling software company? What's one thing you've learned as a compliance senior manager in a direct selling company? And what's one thing you've learned recently as a regulator that could be helpful to the direct selling industry? Maybe starting with you, Adam? A piece of advice?
Leaving me no time to prepare what my answer is.
On the spot.
It's a tough question.
On the spot. This wasn't on the preparatory. I don't remember talking about this.
Also, whatever you say will be binding, so be careful.
legal commitment. Okay. I mean, I think, for me, it's been interesting. I only joined the ASA in 2021. So to me, the entire influencer space has been really eye-opening. And I guess it's been evolving so fast that it's been really interesting to, just to learn about it and understand what the pitfalls are. I think if there's anything that I wanted to draw out, actually, I think it's sort of something that we touched on already, is that there is no silver bullet for solving these issues. It's really got to be collaborative solutions, and everyone can do some piece of the puzzle, whether it's brands, agencies that connect them with influencers, the influencers themselves, the platforms and the regulators. No one of those individuals has the power to solve these problems on their own. It really needs to be a collaboration where everyone does their piece. And I think over time, everyone is recognizing that. And that's been really interesting for me to see that absolutely we want brands to do everything they can do, but we also recognize there are other parties in this ecosystem that also need to help brands and make the whole thing work.
All right, thanks, Adam. It's been really interesting to have your earnest contribution here. Adriana?
Now me. Ooh. Okay. Well, I've learned that our job, our compliance, is never-ending situation, but we have a lot of things that we can do to help, like Adam said. And I'm going to talk here for Seldia, for example. It's a great platform for us, the companies and service providers, and Adam and what he does. It's a great way here, Seldia, to help us. Because I've never, in my time here, I've never had this opportunity of talking about these issues. And thank you to Seldia, now we have learned during these 2 days about things that we can do as an industry. So as I said before, sometime in this hour, is that we need to find synergies between the industry, between us companies. We need to work together, and I think what Seldia is doing is a great initiative, and presenting us to people like Johnathan is even, it's great, because now I'm so excited and going to. And then, meeting people like Adam, so we have a person and a face to contact in case of questions and in case of, doing something for the industry and for compliance. And because people don't like talking about compliance, as I said, we're always the bad guys, but it's something that makes our industry safer, and it's something that we need to do, and we need to be as efficient as possible. So.
All right, thanks. Johnathan?
I would add to that, I don't know if this is a lesson learned. I have learned that it's just, as much as as I see the problems in the States, they're here, but there's just a different approach collaboratively here that I feel that's not present right now in the States. There is with the industry, but not regulars. No, I think that the to build on to what Adriana said, there's automation, there's ways that we can address the issues that exist now. Not just our tool, but lots of ways you can do things with Gen Con's tools and the things that we're doing in back offices. There's lots of ways to stay in touch and stay close with the distributors to ensure that they're trained, they're educated, they know what they're doing. That, you know, most of them are very innocent. 90% are innocent of any ill intent. They're just sharing their story. Unfortunately, their story doesn't always resonate with regulators because it's like, oh, that's your story, but not anyone else's story. That's just a matter of education. So I would just say that the folks here, if we could focus on the education and training on boarding when it comes to the issues that we have in the space, we'll all be better off for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adam, Adriana, Johnathan, thank you so much
Thank
for discussing this
Thank
together today.